The NFL season is upon us, so people all over the world are trying to assemble the best NFL team they can through fantasy football. And if you're anything like us here at Front Office Pros, you're in it for the long haul. I'm talking Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, if you saw our last video on the 3 players you should definitely buy now in a Dynasty Fantasy Football League, here are some guys that I want to try to get rid of. Guys that have already hit their ceiling and are likely going to trend down from here on out. So here you go. Welcome to Front Office Pros. We are a Dynasty salary cap full IDP league. In essence, we are GMs. We're trying to have the most authentic GM experience you can have in fantasy football. We want you to do the same. So here we are. We're giving advice for your Dynasty leagues to try to make it more engaging. Our league averages 50 plus trades a year. We want you to have that same kind of engagement. So here's some tips we have today. I have a little story that'll lead into the topic of today. So when I was in high school, I'm a Ravens fan. I like Todd Heap. My dad wanted to get me a jersey. It's my first NFL jersey. He was going to get it for me for Christmas. Says, I'm going to get him a Todd Heap jersey. His connection he had was taking a little while. We didn't end up getting it until the off season, I'm pretty sure, after the Super Bowl. And then it turns out Todd Heap was in a contract year and he was no longer on the Ravens after that. I can't remember for sure. He was in a contract year or he got traded or something. But if we had known some of the things that we're going to tell you about some other players, if we had known that about Todd Heap at the time, probably would not have bought a Todd Heap jersey, because I'm sure the signs were there that this was his last year as a Raven. So we're going to give you similar insight on some players, more from a fantasy perspective on who you should sell right now if he's on your Dynasty fantasy team. So we'll start with Steve. We'll kick it off. Who do you got for us?
All right. So it just so happens that I own this player on my team. So
Oh boy.
if you guys are interested, we could talk later.
You're
right?
fielding some offers. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fielding some offers. This is my opportunity.
You might be outing yourself here, Steve. I don't know if
Yeah.
anyone's gonna want to take him off your hands after this.
That's true.
We'll see.
That's true.
This is not a good owner move.
No, it's not. It's not. But hey, you know what? I got to be transparent. This is what the people need. This is what they want. So
Yep.
I got to show my cards.
All
So
right.
my player is running back Josh Jacobs. And one of the things that you're going to hear from me is I always like to follow what it is the NFL team is doing. What did the Las Vegas Raiders do this season? Off season, I should say. Well, they have a new head coach with Josh McDaniels coming from the Patriots organization, who notoriously, as the offensive coordinator, involved multiple running backs and is always a nightmare and a headache when it comes to figuring out which Patriots running back is going to go off that week. And so entering him now as the Raiders coach, and then you've got to follow the money. What did they do? They declined Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. That's a bad sign. When you decline, when a 5th-year option is a great bargain for a team. So if they're declining it for the player, that kind of tells you their intentions. Think about over the past few years, who's been declined? Rashad Penny, not so good. Sony Michel on the Patriots, not so good. Players who have had their 5th-year option accepted. Todd Gurley, he was pretty good for a while. Melvin Gordon, he was pretty good for a while. Saquon Barkley, who Charlie talked about in this other video, he's good. So there's a lot of players who ended up getting their 5th-year option accepted. His got declined. So running backs, he's 24, so he's still relatively young, but we know that running backs have a small shelf life and can just fall off the cliff at any time. When it comes to Jacobs last season, he has been seeing an uptick in targets and receptions every year since he's been in the NFL, and he's been in the NFL for a few seasons now. And you would think that's a positive sign, but now you've got rumors that, you know, they may use Amir Abdullah in the backfield with receiving. He might have receivings. They might put in Brandon Bolden some. And they drafted Zamir White, who, although they say he's 4th on the depth chart, it could be Patriots mind tricks where they say he's the 4th, but all of a sudden he's the guy. So, and he ends up being involved by week 5 or 6. So the reality is, I expect him to not be involved in the pass game as much. I expect him to get less carries, and he's gotten less carries every year. So I think he's a big time sell. Problem is, I don't know how much you can get for him. I think most people are pretty low on him in the industry. So my bet is, if I'm doing bad by the deadline, someone's going to want a running back 2 or something because they're scarce. Maybe one of the running backs went down, and that's my time to sell. So you got to know when to sell, but also keep in mind who you're going to sell. But he's my sell.
Man, that's gotta hurt, Steve, coming from you. I mean, how much did you end up spending for Josh Jacobs in that trade a few years ago?
Horrible. Worst trade in my life. Worst trade in my life.
What'd you give up for him, Steve?
I don't even think I want to say it. I gave I think I gave like a first. Was it two firsts?
Two firsts, yeah.
And a second in Jalen Reagor, which that's not a problem. But yeah, that was.
That's when you wish you could have back for sure.
Well, because you think running backs are going to go early, and I thought I needed it, and yeah, it's really bad. So,
wow.
But it's a sunk cost. You just gotta. You can't have
be thinking about that.
No, we've all had some of those.
You just gotta.
The trade is in your rear view.
You've recovered well, Steve.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, Joe, you got anything, or you want to go on to your player?
Yeah, I like Jacobs as a sell, Steve. I don't know if I'll be interested in acquiring from you, but I think he definitely is a good sell. As he's not looking. I mean, like you said, not a good sign they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Doesn't look like the primary back there anymore, so I don't really want any piece of him. But I'll get into my player here, which is a player I previously owned. But like Steve, I generally like to follow what the NFL does. But in this instance, I actually went against what the Broncos did. I had Bradley Chubb. He's my sell player. And I decided to decline his 5th-year option where the Broncos chose to accept it. My main reason for not picking up the 5th-year option, other than the cost of it, last year, he's a talented player, but he's not on the field enough. And in my opinion, the best ability is availability. And
boom,
he's shown it on the field. The big hype, as you can see, I'm a Broncos fan as well. Hype has always been, he's super talented. He was opposite of Von Miller. Problem is, he and Von Miller only played around 10 games together on the field at the same time. So that really has affected him. Now they're saying, and then, pair him up with Randall Gregory and see what happens. Well, Randall Gregory traditionally doesn't stay healthy either. He's very good when he's on the field too. He could have a good year, but I'd rather just stay away from him.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I mean, he was a top pick for the Broncos. A lot of big hype for him. I kind of wonder. I don't know this. I kind of wonder if he'd be better in a 4-3 scheme. He's been in a 3-4 scheme his entire career. I almost want to say, when I was watching the draft, that they were expecting him to be more of that type of role. So I wonder if he's just not in the right fit.
I think that could be the case, Steve. I could see him as a 4-3 defensive end. The thing of it is he has great power, but he doesn't necessarily have that quick twitch ability that you kind of need to get around the edge in a 3-4 defense. I mean, that's what made Von Miller so elite, other than the fact that he gets off the ball so fast. But his ability to turn the edge. I mean, I think that could be a good fit if Bradley Chubb does leave the Broncos after this year. Maybe look for him to go to that 4-3 defense, and maybe he does excel on that role.
But like you said, though, he's the type of player that you'd almost want to see it before you to believe it. Like, you're not going to just have, blind faith that he's just going to miraculously have like a 10+ sack season. He could, but you'd have to see it before you really invest in him.
Yeah, I'd like to see him stay healthy. He's had a lot of ankle injuries through his career, foot injuries. I'd like to see him play somewhat of a full season, see what his production is before I go ahead and get him. But that's why I really stayed away from him and declined his 5th-year option.
Yeah, say bye to Chubb. That is smart.
Let me ask you this, Joe. Bradley Chubb or Nick Chubb? Who'd you rather have?
Oh boy. I think I'd rather have Nick Chubb. I mean,
Absolutely.
run first offense there. I know Kareem Hunt's there, but I'd put my plus the scarcity of running back. I think Nick Chubb would be the better option.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, Char, who you got for us? Who are you selling right now?
All righty, we got on the docket, on the chopping block, Tremaine Edmunds. Okay, Tremaine
Ooh.
Edmunds, middle linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, entering into his 5th year. Right off the bat, there are some big issues. Okay, so first one is his points per game have decreased each of his first 4 seasons. So in essence, he's been getting worse from a fantasy perspective. And I mean, there's nothing like that's really giving me reason to think that's going to change. That all of a sudden he's going to go back to year 1 fantasy point production. Okay, and then so that's a big thing. Second thing is I got a little case study for us all today. So Tremaine Edmunds, he's entering into his 5th year with the Bills on the 5th year option, right? He's going to be a free agent next year. The Bills haven't extended him yet. I'm going to bring you back to a case study of Joe Schobert. Maybe you don't remember him. Maybe you do. Middle linebacker for the Cleveland Browns. Okay, Joe Schobert other than his like rookie season, he had way better fantasy production than Tremaine Edmunds throughout his last 3 years on Cleveland. Okay, I had him on my team at this point. I had him. He was awesome. One of the top linebackers. I gave him a big time contract extension or re-sign him in the offseason, 4 years to Joe Schobert. That was one of the biggest, most worst, atrocious contracts I've ever given to a player. Okay, here's the issue. Joe Schobert, after Cleveland, he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He continued his production he had with the Jags, but then the Jags traded him to Pittsburgh in the middle of last season. His production tanked. Now he's not even in the league anymore. Okay, that's a lot of just dead money, bad contract to Joe Schobert. Really a scheme change. He didn't fit. I mean, the one difference here is Tremaine Edmunds was a 1st-round pick. I think that does go a long way with defensive players. Like that means, yeah, he had some special talent come out of college. That should keep him around the league a little longer. Joe Schobert was a 4th-round pick. So there is some differences there. But again, the Bills have not signed Tremaine Edmunds. There's no reason to know whether he's going to stay in that same scheme or not. He could end up like Joe Schobert, off the league somewhere else. I don't really want him on my team. He's still got the pedigree that you might be able to sell him and get something in return for him. I would do that now in our league. So, I had him on my team last year. I said, nope, there's no way I'm going to re-sign this guy for the amount of money that he wanted. He wanted $28 million for 3 years. Okay. I was like, nope, see ya. Now, what happened in free agency for Tremaine Edmunds was just absolutely mind-blowing. Let me tell you what he got in free agency. So he wanted 3 years for $28 million. Someone paid this man $65 million for 3 years. That's almost 3 times more than what he actually wanted in a contract, what his actual value is to a team. That was ridiculous. Now, you could say, oh, you should have signed him. He's obviously was worth that in the league. I just say, no, some team got absolutely toasted with that contract. I feel bad for them. We'll see how that turns out in the future. Joe, I know you were eyeing him in free agency too. Let's just say you got absolutely spared.
I don't know, Charlie. I mean, I was in on him. I was actually potentially willing to offer him a 5-year deal. I think.
Oh my goodness.
One thing I would want to know, Charlie, because the one thing that does intrigue me about Edmunds is I know he could be away from the Buffalo Bills after this, but what is the age comparison between him and Joe Schobert? Because I feel like that's the separating thing. That's why I was willing to give him a 5-year deal, is he's so young. He came into the league, I think, 17, 18 years old with the Buffalo Bills as a rookie. So that puts him at like 21, 22 right now.
So he's 24 right now. Schobert was 20. Well, 28. He's 28 right now. But now here's the other thing, though. Tremaine Edmunds was linebacker 35 last year in our league, right? Not great. I mean, not even if you only have to start 2 linebackers, kind of puts him on the fringe for linebacker 2. Also, I signed 2 middle linebackers going to be starting this year, Nick Morrow, Leighton Vander Esch, for a total combined of $2 million. I think look to those 2 guys that have almost just as good of a season as Tremaine Edmunds. I'm going to be very happy with that savings.
That's a hot take, everyone, right there.
Wow.
That's a hot take.
We'll see how it plays out.
I'm with Joe on this one. I mean, as the resident Bills fan here, sorry, as a Bills fan too, but for me, I like the age. I think the big question for me is, does he stay with the Bills? I think the Bills are interested. If the Bills sign him to a long-term deal, I am all in on the guy. If he goes somewhere else, that's where there's some variability. I find, depending on the scheme he goes and what he gets paid and what the commitment is, who knows. So, but I think you can't deny his youth and athleticism. I think he could only get better. I'm with you. I think the potential is very alluring to me. So I'm one of those that I'm interested in the player.
I'm glad to have a couple of you guys in the league to go spend your money on guys like Tremaine Edmunds.
Well,
Makes
Charlie,
me very
there's no denying the athletic ability of Edmunds and Joe Schobert are a lot different. I mean, Schobert, the reason Schobert can't stay around anymore is his inability to play pass coverage. If he was a little better in that, he would still have a job, but that's just not where he excels. Where Edmunds has a youth and he's one of the most athletic linebackers. I would look to see him have more success than Schobert in your case study there.
For the record, I was going to sign him for 5 years too, so I was thinking about it as well. So I'm on the same wavelength.
We'll see if it produces in fantasy this year. If he can convert his talent to fantasy points, I would be proved wrong. I've yet to see that.
Wow. We'll see how that plays out. All right. Let us know in the comments. Who do you agree with? Who would you sell now? Josh Jacobs, Bradley Chubb, or Edmunds? Who you got? Who's the best sell now candidate out of these three? If you like this content, if you're into Dynasty football, definitely give us a follow. Follow us on Twitter at Front Office Pros. Subscribe here. Turn on notifications. We're going to have a lot of good content like this. So you definitely want to hop on board.